With William A. Booth from Ipswich in the UK. He's a lecturer in Latin American history at the University College London. Thanks so much for joining us this news hour. Some of the reaction we've had to this result is concern from the United States. They don't believe the results are credible. But do you think such concern is warranted at this stage?
It's very hard to know in details. I don't think anybody's particularly surprised by what we've seen, and certainly not by the complaints that we've had from the opposition, who have been signalling that this would be their response for several months now. The response of many in the United States, not only the United States, but other parts of the region too, has mostly been not to outrightly call the elections fraudulent, but to express concern. And I think this is the first stage we're seeing of what's probably going to be quite a protracted process of trying to get to the bottom of it. And in fact, some left-leaning leaders like Boric, well, Petro via a surrogate, but Boric as well, have asked for greater transparency. Whether we get to see those results is unclear, but at the same time, the opposition are making these very precise claims about what they've received, and as far as I can tell, they don't have any way of knowing that either, because they haven't had the printouts from more than about 30% of the election locations. And I think what's clear is, while there's obviously a groundswell of support for the opposition, there's still many tens, hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans who will go out on the streets to defend the government, and presumably who also voted for it. So I think we're in for a period of tension, certainly judging by what Maduro has said. But I'm not sure it's clear that there'll be substantive changes to what's happened and been announced.
Yes, you talk about the support for the opposition, and it does feel that there was more support for the opposition in this election compared to what we've seen in the past. Is part of that due to the fact that the opposition was more united in this election?
I mean, it's down to the fact that they actually took part in the election. Mainly, I mean, they've had large parts of the opposition have had an abstentionist tactic going back for around a decade now. And in fact, in this election, they changed tack on that. And the US encouraged that as well. They said that they wanted to see something that looked like a competitive election in order to reduce sanctions, in order to open up the oil trade. So this is part of a very long-term process, part of a long-term dance between the Venezuelan government and exterior actors, but also it is potentially quite a significant change for this domestic opposition. They have tried the electoral route. They've not obviously been given a victory through that means, and we'll have to see what happens next, because this may fragment them. There is a lot of characters who have a very strong view on where they should go next, including trying to use arms against the government, and that's being encouraged from outside by people like Javier Milei as well, who was straight onto Twitter asking for the army to overthrow the government. So there could potentially be some very serious tensions in the next few days.
Yes, it will be certainly interesting to see what happens. But if we look at Maduro staying in power for another term, it's most likely that US sanctions will remain. Venezuela is a country that is in an economic crisis. The people, of course, the worst affected. What do you see Maduro doing to try and improve the living conditions for his people?
There's not a great deal that the Venezuelan government can do on its own, and I think what we have seen is this improved prospect of trade with the US, and actually the US is so oil hungry, I'm not sure that will change even with other forms of sanctions. I think the most important thing for improving conditions within Venezuela is for the government to be gently encouraged by its regional neighbors to move towards a much more plural version of democracy. And I think you can read between the lines in some of the statements from Lula's representative, from Petro's representative, from Boric, that is what they are pushing for. While they're not openly calling Maduro a dictator or anything like that, they are saying that this needs to be a process with some kind of change in the medium term.
William A. Booth, really good to get your analysis. Thanks so much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks.